The rusted halo did not appear on most navigation charts. It had been removed from public records 11 years ago, after a bureaucratic restructuring that nobody questioned because nobody cared. That suited Mara Vuss perfectly. She had chosen the station the same way she had chosen solitude, not with sadness, but with intention. The rusted halo was a decommissioned xenobiological research platform, hexagonal, slow spinning, held in lazy orbit around a gas giant with no name and no visitors. It still had power because Mara kept it running. It still had oxygen because she maintained the filters. It still had her because she had nowhere else she wanted to be. Mara was 53 years old. She had worked for the Galactic Research Consortium for 19 of those years, cataloging non-human biology across 14 systems. She had published papers. She had won a minor academic award that now sat in a drawer beneath a broken calibration tool. She had also watched her entire research team die in a classified incident that the consortium later described in official records as a navigation accident. It was not a navigation accident. She had stopped asking questions when it became clear that asking questions was the most dangerous thing a person could do. Now she grew hydroponic vegetables in the old specimen bays, repaired things that broke, and read old books on a cracked tablet she had owned since her 20s. The silence was not emptiness, it was clean. She was replacing a corroded water recycler coupling when the docking bay alarm triggered, not a ship alarm. Not the proximity sensor for scheduled maintenance drones. Those were all disabled. The impact alarm. Something had hit the exterior docking collar. Mara set down the coupling and walked slowly toward the bay. She did not run. Running invited panic, and panic made people careless. She checked the external camera from the corridor panel first. A small vessel, barely the size of a cargo shuttle, had wedged itself against the outer dock. It was not a clean approach. It had come in tumbling, catching the magnetic clamp by chance or desperation. Hull markings had been burned away. The vessel was venting something pale and thin from a crack along the port side. Not fuel, atmosphere. She suited up in 3 minutes. She was in the bay in 5. The hatch on the small vessel was not sealed properly. It gave when she applied pressure from the outside, which meant the person inside had not locked it, which meant either they could not or they did not expect to need to. The interior was dark and cold and smelled of burnt insulation and something floral she did not recognize. On the floor, curled against the pilot's seat, was a child. Mara had encountered many non-human species in her career. She did not freeze or step back. She knelt. The child was small, pale-skinned in a way that read less like color and more like something that had been washed too many times. Her features were delicate, angular, with slightly too large eyes that were currently closed. 3 thin ridges ran along her temples and disappeared into hair that was dark and matted. She was breathing, but shallowly. Her hands were pressed to her chest, curled around an object the size of a large fruit. Mara checked her vital signs with the handheld bioreader she kept in her suit pocket from old habit. The readings were alien. She could not interpret all of them, but the patterns of stress and shallow rhythm were universal enough to understand. She carried the child inside. She did not think about what it meant or who might be looking or what she was getting herself into. Those were questions for later. Right now there was a child who was cold and hurt, and the only appropriate response to that was warmth and care. She placed her in the small medical bay that had not been used in 4 years, activated the heating panel, and covered her with the one actual blanket Mara kept on the station for nights when the temperature controls drifted. Then she noticed the object properly. The child had not let go of it, even unconscious. Both small hands remained folded around it. Mara leaned close. It was roughly spherical, made of interlocking crystalline panels set into a metallic frame of extraordinary delicacy. The craftsmanship was unlike anything she had seen, not in complexity, but in the quality of care. Every join was precise. Every edge was smooth. At the center, visible through the lattice of crystal, something dark and small sat still, a music box. Or something that functioned like one. It was old, very old. And it was broken in ways that were not structural. Nothing was cracked or snapped, but functional, in a way that Mara could not immediately explain. The crystal panels were intact but dull. The central mechanism was still. It looked the way a held breath looked, like it was waiting. She straightened and went to make tea. The child woke 4 hours later. Mara was sitting nearby, reading, making no attempt to be elsewhere when it happened. The child's eyes opened. The irises were a deep amber shot through with something that caught the light like facets, and she looked at the ceiling for a moment before she looked at Mara. She did not scream. She did not flinch back. She looked at Mara the way a person looked at someone they had been told about, assessed, considered, then accepted. "You are human," she said. Her galactic common was accented and imprecise, but entirely clear. "I am," Mara said. "Are you hurt?" The child checked herself with a small methodical focus that was incongruously adult. "Not outside," she said. "I am hungry," Mara fed her. Hydroponic greens, grain porridge, a small amount of dried protein she had been saving. The child ate with focused, quiet efficiency and did not speak until she was finished. Then she held up the music box. "Can you fix this?" Her voice was steady. Her eyes were not. In them Mara saw the particular quality of hope that has been disappointed many times, but has not yet given up entirely. It was a fragile and precise emotion, and Mara handled it accordingly. "May I look at it?" she asked. The child handed it over with both hands, like an offering. "My mother made it for me," she said. "She said it would keep me safe. But it stopped singing a long time ago." She paused. "I think it is sad." Mara turned the object over in her hands. It was lighter than it looked. The crystal panels were warm, not from the child's body heat. She had been unconscious, warm in themselves, faintly, like a coal that had not fully gone out. She reached for her examination tools, the portable kit she still kept organized out of habit. The moment the sensor wand came within 3 centimeters of the music box, the device powered on with a startled hum. Mara held very still. The hum faded. But the faint warmth in the crystal increased, slightly. "What is your name?" Mara asked. "Sova, Sova, I am Mara." She set the sensor wand aside. "I think your box does not like tools," she said. "I will try something else." She worked without instruments. She used her eyes and her hands, the way she had learned to examine fragile biological specimens early in her career. Touch is not forcing. Touch is asking. The crystalline panels had a sequence. She could feel it in the spacing. They had been disrupted, not broken. Shifted from an order they needed to be in. Like a word with its letters rearranged. Still the same letters, still capable of meaning. Just wrong. She began, very slowly, to move them back. Sova watched without speaking. There was a quality to her silence that was different from emptiness. It was attentive, present, like an animal watching something it trusts. After 40 minutes, a single note sounded. Clear and low and brief. It resonated through the medical bay and was gone before it fully arrived. But it had been there, real, unmistakable. Sova made a sound that Mara could not categorize and did not need to. Then the scanner on the far wall chirped. Once, twice, a third time. Mara looked up. The display was showing a sweep pattern, a wide-frequency search moving methodically through this region of space. She recognized the frequency band from her consortium years. It was not commercial. It was not exploratory. It was galactic enforcement, Tier 1 classification. The kind of sweep they used for things they did not want found by accident and very much wanted found on purpose. She looked at Sova. Sova had already pulled her knees to her chest. She was watching the scanner with the careful stillness of a child who has learned to recognize the sound of something approaching. "They sweep for the music," she said quietly. "The box makes a signal when it begins to wake up." She looked at Mara. Her amber eyes were steady and very tired. "I am sorry. I did not know it would." Mara looked at the scanner. The sweep was distant, but it was moving closer in a pattern that was not random. She turned back to the music box in her hands. The single note it had offered still seemed to linger in the air, fading. On the far sensor screen, a small indicator light shifted from green to amber, sweep signal strengthening. Sova's hand found Mara's sleeve. Her grip was light but certain, the way a child held on when they had learned that letting go was worse. "They always find the music," she whispered. Mara set her jaw. "Not always," she said. And she went back to work. The enforcement vessels arrived 6 hours later. 3 of them, sleek and gray and bearing the double ring insignia of the Galactic Compliance Directorate, a name that had always sounded to Mara like something designed by someone who wanted the word enforcement without the connotations. They did not fire. They did not need to. The rusted halo had no weapons, and they knew it. They established a containment triangle and opened a channel with the kind of calm that belonged to people who were never told no. "Attention, station occupant. You are holding an unregistered anomalous entity classified under Directive 47. Surrender the entity immediately, and your cooperation will be recorded favorably." Mara stood in front of the communication panel and thought about the 11 years she had spent being careful, quiet, out of the way. She pressed the respond key. "My name is Mara Voss. I am a retired xenobiologist. I am not holding anything. I have a child in my medical bay who was injured and needed help." She paused. "She is eating breakfast." A brief silence. Then, "The entity is not a child. It is a Class 9 anomaly and a threat to galactic order. Surrender is not optional." Mara closed the channel. She crossed the station to the medical bay, where Sova was in fact eating a second bowl of grain porridge, which she had requested with polite gravity. The music box sat on the table beside her. Mara had returned it when she came back from the first examination the night before. She had not finished the repair, not yet, but she was close. She could feel the sequence resolving in her mind the way a word you cannot quite remember suddenly surfaces. "They are here," Sova said. It was not a question. 3 ships. There will be more. Sova stirred her porridge. There are always more, after the first 3. Mara sat across from her. "Your people, the Vorath. Tell me what you know about them." Sova looked at the table for a moment. "My mother said we were weavers, that we could fix what was broken in living things, in soil and water and air, in wounds that medicine could not reach." She looked up. "She said the galaxy called it dangerous. Why? Because the people in charge of the galaxy made profit from broken things." She said it simply, the way children said things that adults spent years learning to see. If someone can heal a dead world, there's no reason to buy a new one. Mara was quiet for a moment. Then she picked up the music box and returned to work. The sequence was there. She could feel it now with confidence. 6 panels in the outer ring, each needing to rotate by a degree she could measure only by the resistance of her own fingertips. It was not engineering. It was closer to listening. Each panel had a position it wanted to be in, and her job was not to force it, but to ask. The 5th panel settled. The 6th. A sound began. It was not one note this time. It was a phrase, 5 tones, then 7, then a winding thread of melody that climbed and fell and climbed again. It was old. It was very old. Mara could feel the age in it the way you felt the age in stone. Not visually, but physically. In the weight of it, in the sense of accumulated time. The hydroponic bay across the corridor had sensors connected to the station's atmospheric monitors. 3 of them spiked simultaneously. She did not look. She already knew what they were reading. The crack in the secondary hull seal that she had logged as a low-priority repair 6 months ago. She heard it hiss once, then go silent. Not the hiss of venting atmosphere. The hiss of something closing. Sova had gone very still. Her eyes were closed. Her hands were open on the table, palms up. Her breathing had slowed to something deep, and even that was less like sleep and more like concentration. Along the ridges on her temples, a faint luminescence moved in pulses synchronized to the music. She was not playing it. She was answering it. Mara set the music box on the table between them and watched. After a long moment, Sova opened her eyes. They were bright and wet, but her expression was not grief. It was something older and more complicated. "The archives are inside it," she said softly. "My mother's voice is inside it." She pressed one hand flat against the surface of the box, and it pulsed once, warm, strong, beneath her palm. She put everything inside. Everything the Vorith knew, every method, every healing, every record of what we were. Her voice was quiet and steady. She knew they were coming for her. She knew they would erase the history. So she gave it to me to keep safe. Mara thought about 19 years of research. About a navigation accident that was not a navigation accident. "I know something about what gets erased," she said. She opened the distress protocol panel she had sealed behind a maintenance cover years ago and never expected to use. Human emergency broadcast, long range. Encrypted by default, but readable by any vessel with a human-built receiver. She did not write a long message. She did not plead or explain. She wrote, "Rusted Halo Station. Child in danger. Galactic compliance inbound. Come if you are able." She sent it. Then she went back to sit with Sova and listen to the music. The first human vessel arrived in 2 hours. A single cargo runner, battered, fast, with a pilot named Asay, who had received the signal while hauling recycled parts through a nearby transit lane and had turned around without sleeping on it. He held position between the rusted halo and the nearest compliance ship with the calm of someone who had made up his mind about something fundamental. The second arrived 40 minutes later. A retired military survey vessel crewed by 3, whose captain had served with the consortium in Mara's era and knew what Tier 1 sweeps meant. They came in ones and pairs and small clusters over the following 3 hours, not a fleet. Nothing coordinated, just human beings in human vessels who received a simple message and asked themselves a simple question and arrived at a simple answer. A medical transport. A research yacht. 2 independent traders who did not know each other but fell into formation naturally, the way things do when they share a purpose. On board the medical transport was a journalist. Her name was Kates, and she had been documenting Compliance Directorate operations for 4 years and had never gotten a story that could not be quietly buried. She contacted Mara on a secure channel and asked one question. "Can I broadcast what is happening?" Mara looked at Sova. Sova nodded once. "Broadcast everything," Mara said. Kates broadcast the music first. She connected her equipment to Mara's transmission panel and let the music box play across the open channel. No commentary, no framing. Just the sound of something very old and very true moving through the frequencies that ships and stations monitored. The response was not immediate. Truth never moved as fast as fear. But it moved. Compliance opened a general channel. Their representative spoke with the careful authority of someone who had never had to justify themselves before. "You are in violation of Directive 47. The entity you are protecting poses an existential risk to galactic order. Stand down." Captain Reyes, the survey vessel, whose name Mara had learned in the last hour, replied before she could. His voice was not angry. It was tired in the particular way of people who have seen too much managed injustice. "We have reviewed the broadcasts. The child's technology is restorative. It healed a hull seal. It caused plants to grow. Show us the threat." Silence from Compliance. "Show us who decided healing was a threat," Reyes continued. "Show us the original Directive 47 filing. Show us who signed it and what they owned at the time." More silence. The archives had been broadcasting in fragments since the music started. Hidden data in the tonal patterns, encoded in a way that Vorith knew and everyone else was only now learning to read. Neutral observers and 3 adjacent systems were already decoding them. The records emerged in pieces. Galactic Council votes from 60 years ago. Economic projections. A classified assessment concluding that a species capable of healing dead worlds represented an unacceptable disruption to the planetary resettlement industry. The species had been labeled weapons because they were the opposite of weapons. Sova stood at the observation window. The stars were filled with ships. Human ships in their quiet, ragged line. Compliance vessels still in their formation, but still waiting. Mara understood, for an order that no one further up the chain wanted to give publicly, now that so many eyes were open. "Why do humans do this?" Sova asked. She was not challenging the question. She was genuinely asking. "My mother said you would come. I believed her because she was my mother. But I did not understand why." Mara stood beside her. "I do not think there is a grand reason," she said. "I think most of us just cannot walk past something wrong when we can see it clearly," she considered. "We are bad at looking away. Is that a good thing?" "Frequently inconvenient," Mara said. "Almost always right." Sova almost smiled. The compliance vessels began to withdraw. Slowly, without announcement, in the way things retreated when they knew they had lost the story, even if they had not lost the standoff. One ship. Then a second. The third remained the longest, then turned and entered warp without a word. The human vessels held position a little longer. Making sure, Kate's broadcast continued. The archive spread. In council halls and station lounges and cargo ships crossing empty space, people listened to the music of a species they had been told were extinct and dangerous, and heard instead something that sounded like the opposite of both. Mara finished a cup of tea she had made 3 hours ago and forgotten. It was cold. She drank it anyway. Sova picked up the music box and held it the way she had held it when she first arrived, with both hands close to her chest, but differently now, not protecting it, carrying it. "What happens now?" she asked. "People will argue," Mara said honestly. "There will be committees and disputes, and people who were part of this who will try to reframe what they did." She looked at the girl. "But the archives are out. The music has been heard. Those things do not go back in." Sova nodded slowly. "My mother used to say that the hardest healing was the kind that happened in things people could not touch. In fear, in old decisions." She turned the box over in her hands. "She said it always took longer than the healers wanted." She sounds like she understood people very well. "She watched many species for a long time." Sova looked up. "She watched humans the longest. She said you were the most confusing because you were capable of great cruelty, and you were also the ones most likely to interrupt it." She looked at Mara. She said she could never predict which one. But she trusted the interrupting part. Mara thought about 19 years. About the years after. About a broken coupling on a water recycler, and a child in a docking bay, and a music box that needed someone willing to listen instead of force. "I think she was right too," she said. The music box played one more phrase, unhurried, clear, resonating through the station's corridors and out through its old walls into the dark. In receiving stations across 3 systems, instruments registered the signal, not as a threat, not as an anomaly, as a frequency they did not have a classification for yet, because the classification that fit it had been deliberately removed from the records 60 years ago. They would have to make a new one,